The coat wasn't hers. That was the first thing Sylvia Marchetti noticed when the old woman shuffled through the food bank's side door on that Tuesday in January. The coat was 3 sizes too big, men's cut, dark green, one button missing at the chest. The woman wearing it was maybe 75, maybe older, small, white hair cut close to her skull. She held a plastic grocery bag in both hands, like it was something precious, and she stood just inside the doorway for a long moment, blinking against the fluorescent lights, before she took a single step forward. Nobody moved to help her. The lineup stretched 15 people deep. A young mother wrestling a stroller. 2 men in work boots staring at their phones. A teenager with headphones in, eyes on the ceiling. Everyone managing their own weight, their own Tuesday, their own reason for being in that church basement in Hamilton, Ontario, at 11 in the morning. The old woman took another step. Her left shoe had a split along the sole. Sylvia could see it from where she stood, halfway down the volunteer table, filling paper bags with canned soup and crackers. "Next, please," the woman at the front called out. Nobody offered to let the old woman move ahead. Nobody looked at her. She shuffled toward the back of the line and stood there, coat swallowing her whole, grocery bag hanging from both fists. Sylvia set down the soup can. She was 63 years old. Retired school secretary, widowed going on 4 years. She volunteered here every Tuesday because her daughter had told her she needed structure, and because the apartment got very quiet after 8 in the morning. She had $40 in her wallet, her week's spending money already allocated. Bus fare home, a small bag of coffee, and if there was anything left, maybe a library book sale. $40. Carefully counted. She walked to the end of the line. "Ma'am." She touched the old woman's sleeve gently. "Would you like to come up with me? I can help you through." The old woman looked at her. Her eyes were brown, very clear, and for a moment she didn't say anything. Then she said, "I don't want to cause trouble." "You won't," Sylvia said. "Come on." She walked her to the front, helped her pick what she needed. Lentil soup, bread, a small jar of peanut butter, 2 apples. The woman held each item like she was deciding whether she deserved it. She thanked the volunteers twice. She thanked Sylvia 3 times. In the parking lot, Sylvia saw her standing in the cold without a hat on, the grocery bag in her hands, looking at the bus stop across the street. A light snow had started. Fine, dry snow, the kind that doesn't look like much until it's in your eyes. "Do you have somewhere to be?" Sylvia asked. "My building, on Barton." Sylvia knew Barton Street. She was going the opposite direction. She looked at her watch. Then at the bus stop. Then at the woman. "My name is Sylvia," she said. "I'll walk with you to the stop and make sure the bus comes." The woman's name was Agatha Brennan. She was 78. She lived in a subsidized apartment on Barton with a cat named Harold and a window that faced a parking garage. She told Sylvia this in the way people tell things to strangers. Matter-of-factly, without needing a response, just saying it out loud because it was true. The bus was 12 minutes late. Sylvia stood with her the whole time. When the bus finally came, Agatha turned to her at the door. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Sylvia said. Agatha nodded, climbed on. The doors closed. Sylvia walked to her own stop in the snow, a little colder than before, and didn't think much about it afterward. She had groceries to put away. A call to return. Her daughter was coming for dinner on Thursday, and the bathroom needed cleaning. She didn't know that Agatha Brennan had watched her through the bus window as it pulled away. Didn't know that Agatha had been watching the food bank line for 40 minutes before she came inside, working up the nerve. Didn't know that the coat belonged to her late husband. Didn't know that this was only the 3rd time Agatha had been there, and that the first 2 times she had stood outside and left without going in. And she didn't know that the man sitting 3 seats behind Agatha on that bus, the man in the gray blazer who'd seen everything through the food bank window while he waited for his driver, was already pulling out his phone. Before that morning, before the food bank, before the snow, let me tell you who Sylvia Marchetti was. She had grown up in Stony Creek, the second of 4 daughters, daughter of a man who fixed appliances, and a woman who kept the books for a hardware store. She was not the beautiful one, or the clever one, or the one who moved to Toronto. She was the steady one, the one who remembered birthdays, the one who drove people to appointments and never mentioned it after. She married at 26. Pietro Marchetti, who ran a small floor-laying business and laughed too loud at his own jokes and made the best arrabbiata she had ever tasted. They had one daughter, Lena. They had 31 years, most of them good, some of them hard, and then Pietro had a stroke in the hardware store parking lot on a Wednesday in March. And Sylvia had 48 hours to say everything and nothing. And then it was just her and the apartment. Lena lived in Burlington now. She was 34, married with 2 boys under 6. She called on Sundays. She meant to call more often. Sylvia understood. She had been busy at 34. The apartment was a 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor. She kept the 2nd bedroom exactly as it had been when Pietro was alive, his wool sweaters folded on the chair, his books in the same order on the shelf. She told herself she hadn't gotten around to changing it. That had been 4 years ago. Every Tuesday, she took the 27 bus to the food bank and worked the table for 3 hours, and took the bus home. It was the steadiest part of her week. She was nobody's idea of remarkable. She knew that. She was a short, round woman with gray hair she kept in a braid, who wore sensible shoes and brought oatmeal cookies to the volunteers because she had made too many and didn't want them going stale. She looked like somebody's grandmother, and she was in the way she was to Lena's boys. She was the kind of woman people looked past without noticing they were doing it. That Tuesday in January, she looked past herself too. She went home, made tea, and did not think about the old woman in the green coat. 3 days later, on Friday morning, her buzzer rang. It was 8:47. She was still in her housecoat, waiting for coffee to finish. She pressed the intercom. "Yes, Mrs. Marchetti? My name is Helen Cho. I'm calling on behalf of Desmond Firth. Mr. Firth would like to speak with you if you have a few minutes. He's downstairs." Sylvia looked at the intercom panel like it owed her an explanation. "Who?" A pause. "Desmond Firth, ma'am. He was at the food bank on Tuesday. He'd like to meet you." She went downstairs in her housecoat and slippers, because she was 63 and not easily rattled, and also because she didn't think it was worth changing. There was a man standing in the lobby, mid-60s, silver hair, well-built, the kind of posture that came from either military service or a great deal of money or both. He wore a gray blazer over a dark sweater, and he had the face of someone who had made many decisions and was prepared to make more. Beside him stood a younger woman in a wool coat, notepad in hand. "Mrs. Marchetti," the man said, "I'm Desmond Firth. Thank you for coming down." He extended his hand. His grip was solid. "I'll be brief because I understand this is unusual. I was on the bus Tuesday morning. I saw what you did at the food bank with Agatha." Sylvia looked at him. "The woman in the green coat," he said. "Is she all right?" Something shifted in Desmond's face. "She's my aunt," he said. "My mother's oldest sister. She raised me for 2 years when I was 9 and 10 after my father left. I've been trying to find a way to be useful to her without making her feel like charity. He paused. "She's very proud." Sylvia nodded. She understood that. "I watched you stand with her for 12 minutes in the snow," Desmond said. "You didn't know who she was. You were going to miss your bus." "I didn't miss it," Sylvia said. "It was late." Desmond looked at her for a long moment. "Can I buy you a coffee, Mrs. Marchetti? There's something I'd like to talk to you about." She said yes, because she hadn't had breakfast yet, and because something in his face told her this mattered to him. They went to a cafe 2 blocks away. Helen, the assistant, sat at a separate table and didn't take notes. Desmond ordered coffee and said nothing for a moment. He turned the cup in his hands. "I'm going to tell you something I don't say to people I've known 5 minutes," he said. "My aunt has lived on Barton Street for 11 years. In that building. She was a nurse for 32 years. ER nurse, night shifts, weekends, the hard rotations. Her husband died 12 years ago, and she had enough to get by, until she didn't. Prescription costs, Building fee increases, the kind of slow leak that doesn't feel like an emergency until the tank is empty. Sylvia listened. I found out she'd been going to the food bank 3 months ago, he said, and I've been trying to figure out what to do about it ever since. Every time I offer something, she gives it back. She sent me a check for a winter coat I had delivered. The check was for the exact amount. He stopped. She looked it up. Sylvia almost smiled. She let you stand with her in the snow, Desmond said quietly. She let you walk her to the bus. Sylvia looked at her cup. She was cold. I know, but it's more than that. She talked about you when I called her Wednesday evening. She said a woman from the food bank walked with her, she said. He paused. She said she seemed like a person who didn't feel sorry for you. She said that was rare. Sylvia didn't answer. Outside the cafe window, the street was bright and cold and ordinary. I have a question for you, Mrs. Marchetti, and please tell me directly if it's wrong of me to ask. Ask it, he told her. She sat back in her chair. She had been a school secretary for 27 years. She knew everyone who came through the office by name within the first week. She knew which kids needed 5 more minutes before they could talk, and which ones needed water, and which ones just needed someone to sit near them without saying anything. She had been the person teachers sent students to when they didn't know what else to do. She had never had a title for that. It was just what she did. This isn't about my aunt, Desmond said. Well, it started with her. But it's bigger than that. He explained it plainly. Firth Community Holdings had been looking for the right person to lead a seniors outreach and navigation program in Hamilton's East End for 2 years. Someone who could work with isolated older adults, people who qualified for services they didn't know about, or were too proud to ask for, or had fallen through the cracks in ways the city's existing programs couldn't catch. Not social work exactly, something softer and more specific. The kind of thing you couldn't train from a textbook. I've interviewed 12 people, he said. They all had the right credentials. Some of them were genuinely good, but... He looked at her. I've been watching you for 3 days, Mrs. Marchetti. Helen found your volunteer file. Pastor Edmonds at the church, he said you've been coming every week for 3 years. He said when someone new comes in and they're scared, the other volunteers send them to you. Sylvia looked at the table. He said you never miss a Tuesday unless you're ill, Desmond continued. He said when the older volunteers leave at noon, you stay until they're done. He said last spring, when the water heater broke and they had to shut down for 2 weeks, you called every regular who depended on that food bank to make sure they had enough. She had called 41 people. She still had the list in her phone. I'm not a social worker, she said. I'm a retired school secretary. I know I don't have a degree in anything useful. I know that too. She looked at him. Then why? Because, he said, useful and credentialed aren't always the same thing, and because the person I need isn't someone who learned this in a classroom. It's someone who just does it. Not because it was assigned, not because anyone was watching, just because the woman was cold. Sylvia was quiet. She thought about Pietro, about the apartment with his sweaters on the chair, about the Tuesdays that were the steadiest part of her week, about Lena's boys who called her Nana and climbed on her like furniture, and would do so for maybe 3 more years before they got too old for it. She thought about $40 a week, bus fare, coffee, maybe a book. What does it pay? She asked. He told her. She set her cup down carefully. That's a real salary. It's a real position. She looked out the window. A man walked by with a dog. A city bus pulled to the curb. I'll need to talk to my daughter, she said. Of course. And I'll need to meet with the team. I'm not agreeing to something I haven't looked at properly. I'd expect nothing less. She pulled on her coat and stood. She was a short, round woman in a housecoat and slippers in a cafe on a Friday morning. And she had just been offered the kind of position people spent careers trying to reach, and she stood up like it was a reasonable thing that had happened. At the door, she stopped. Mr. Firth, your aunt. She turned to face him. She doesn't need to know this came from her. Desmond looked at her. She's proud. Sylvia said. Let her keep that. He nodded. One slow nod. Agreed. She walked home. 2 blocks in the cold, slippers on wet sidewalk, braid over her shoulder. The coffee was still warm in her stomach. The city went about its business around her. She had no idea, standing in that January air, that something was already changing, not just for her. For a whole stretch of streets she had lived near for 30 years without ever quite being seen. But before the offer and the cafe and the phone call she was about to make to Lena, something else happened that she never knew about. At 7 that same morning, Agatha Brennan had sat at her small table by the window that faced the parking garage and drunk her tea, and thought about the woman from the food bank. Harold the cat sat on the radiator. The snow from Tuesday had mostly melted. Agatha had a phone. She used it for 3 things: calls from Desmond, her pharmacist's automated reminders, and the CBC radio app she listened to at night when she couldn't sleep. She wasn't on the internet, she didn't know how to look someone up. But she knew the food bank. She called the church and asked if they could tell her the name of the Tuesday volunteer who wore a braid. The woman on the phone said she wasn't sure. Agatha said she had walked with an older woman to the bus stop in the snow last Tuesday. The woman on the phone said, "Oh, that would be Sylvia." Agatha thanked her. She didn't write it down. She just said the name once, quietly to herself. Then she called Desmond. She didn't mean to tell him anything. She had called to ask about his knee, which had been bothering him since fall. But somewhere in the middle of the conversation she mentioned the food bank, and the woman with the braid, and standing in the snow for 12 minutes. Desmond had been quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Tell me what she looked like." And after that came Helen, and the cafe, and everything else. Sylvia called Lena that afternoon. Lena was quiet for a moment after she heard it. Then she said, "Mum, are you serious?" "Yes. He just walked up to you. He came to the lobby." "Yes. And offered you a job, a position. He was very clear it was a real position, Mum." Lena's voice had that particular tone it got sometimes, the one that was trying to be careful and was not quite managing it. "This is a lot. You're 63, I'm aware. I just mean, you've been saying you wanted to take it easy, after everything with Dad." Sylvia looked at Pietro's sweaters on the chair. "I thought I did," she said. "I think I was wrong." Lena was quiet again. "The apartment is very quiet, Lena." A long pause. Then, softly, "I know, Mum. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just tell me honestly. Do you think I can do this?" She heard Lena breathe. Then, "Mum, you called 41 people from your own phone when the water heater broke. You've been doing this job for 3 years for free." A beat. "I think you've been doing it for 30 years, actually, in the school office." Sylvia held the phone. Outside her window, the parking lot below was filling with the end-of-day crowd. A woman struggled with grocery bags. A man held the door. "All right," she said. "Then I'll go back on Monday and look at it properly." She met with Desmond's team the following week. There were 3 of them. Helen, a program coordinator named Ray who had the earnest energy of someone who had recently discovered he cared about things. And a woman named Dr. Frances Osey, who ran the community health side and who looked Sylvia over with the calm assessment of someone who had been disappointing with applicants for a long time and had not yet been disappointed. Frances asked her 3 questions. How do you talk to someone who doesn't want help? What do you do when someone slips through and you find out too late? And what do you do when you can't fix it? Sylvia answered all 3 without stopping to think, because she had done all 3, in various forms, in a school office and a church basement, and 41 phone calls to people she barely knew. Frances nodded once. That was all. But it was enough. The position was formally offered on a Thursday. She accepted it on Friday in writing, because she was a school secretary and she did things properly. Her title was Community Navigation Coordinator, Hamilton East. She would have a small office in a community center on Burlington Street. She would have a part-time assistant named Patrick, 24 years old, who made very good coffee and was terrified of her for the first 2 weeks. She would have a budget for outreach, actual transportation costs, phone cards, small emergency supplies. things she had been paying for herself quietly for years. She started the first Monday in February. By the end of the first month, she had contacted 63 isolated seniors in the East End catchment. Not sent forms, not mailed pamphlets. Contacted by phone, by bus, by knocking on doors that had been knocked on before, by people who didn't wait long enough for the answer. She found a 71-year-old man on Wentworth who had been eating crackers and peanut butter for 3 weeks because he hadn't known he qualified for grocery delivery. She found a woman on Barton, not Agatha, a different building, who had a gas leak she'd been smelling for 10 days and hadn't reported because she was afraid of getting in trouble with her landlord. She found a couple in their 80s who hadn't seen their doctor in 4 years because they'd lost their health card and didn't know how to get a new one. She fixed all of it. Not dramatically. The way you fix things when you know the right person to call, steadily, without fuss. Sometimes making 3 calls, and sometimes making 12. Patrick followed her around for the first week with a notepad, writing things down, and at the end of the week he said, "How do you know all this stuff?" And she said, "I've been paying attention for 40 years. And he wrote that down too. Frances came to observe on a Wednesday in March. She sat in the corner of Sylvia's small office and watched her work through an hour of calls. After she said, "Where did you train?" Sylvia looked at her. "I didn't." Frances was quiet a moment. Then she said, "I've been trying to write a training manual for 4 years. Would you be willing to let me follow you around?" The manual took 18 months to write. Sylvia's name was not on the cover. She asked to have it that way. Desmond put her name in the dedication instead, and she said she supposed she could live with that. Agatha Brennan didn't know about any of this for the first 6 months. She went to the food bank on Tuesdays. She listened to CBC at night. She called Desmond about his knee. In June, Desmond arranged for a local grocery delivery program, one of the ones Sylvia had connected him to, quietly, without making it obvious, to begin weekly delivery to Agatha's building. A community program for seniors over 75. Agatha qualified. She didn't have to apply, it just started arriving. She called Desmond when the first box came. "Did you do this?" "It's a city program, Auntie. You qualified." "Desmond, you qualified," he said again. And because she was 80 and tired and the apples were good, she let it go. In August, Sylvia was riding the 27 bus home from a late visit when she saw Agatha through the window of a small diner on Barton, sitting at a table with another woman, laughing. Properly laughing, head back, hand on the table. The green coat was nowhere in sight. She was wearing a blue cardigan, and she looked, through the glass, like a woman who had decided to still be here. Sylvia smiled. She didn't get off the bus. She thought about Pietro sometimes, in the office on Burlington Street. She thought about the quiet apartment. She thought about what it feels like to have been useful without knowing it, and then to find out all at once what it added up to. She was not a hero. She was clear about that. She had stood at a bus stop for 12 minutes. She had walked someone to a door. She had made 41 phone calls from her own kitchen table. These were not large things. But here was what she had learned, in 63 years of paying attention. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from being unseen. From walking into a room and watching people's eyes pass over you, like you're part of the furniture, like you are at 78 or 63 or 40, past the age where anything interesting can happen to you, past the point of mattering. She had lived close enough to that feeling to recognize it in Agatha's face that morning in January. She recognized it the way you recognize a street you used to live on, something familiar in the shape of it, and she had just not looked away. That was all. On the first Tuesday in December, almost a full year after the food bank morning, Sylvia finished a long week, locked up her office on Burlington Street, and took the bus home. She had her bag over one arm and her coat buttoned wrong on one side, because she'd done it in a hurry, and her braid had come half loose, and she was thinking about whether she had the energy to cook or whether she was going to eat crackers over the sink like an adult woman with full autonomy over her dinner. The bus was warm. She got a seat, The city went by outside the window. At the Barton stop, a man got on. Late 70s, maybe 80, quilted vest over a flannel shirt. Moving carefully, the way people move when their joints have opinions. He looked at the fare box, patted his jacket pocket, patted it again. Looked at the driver. "I think I left my card at home," he said. Not demanding. Just stating it. Quietly, the way people say things when they already know what the answer will be. The driver's face did not change. "Can't let you on without fare, sir." The man nodded. Started to turn. 12 people on the bus, 4 of them watching, the rest managing their phones, their bags, their Tuesday. Sylvia stood up. She was at the front before she had quite decided to be. She tapped her card twice. "I've got it," she said. The driver looked at her. The man looked at her. He was tall, or had been once, with a white beard and careful eyes. "I don't want to trouble you," he said. "You're not," she said. "Come on, there's a seat." She gave him hers. She stood, holding the bar, coat still buttoned wrong. He said thank you 3 times. He got off 4 stops later. At the door, he turned. "God bless you, bless," he said. "Safe home," she said. The doors closed. The bus kept moving. The woman in the seat across from Sylvia had been watching. 60s, reading glasses on top of her head. A reusable bag with a library logo on her lap. She said, "That was kind." Sylvia shrugged. He was cold. The woman smiled. "You do this a lot?" Sylvia thought about it. The food bank. Agatha. The 41 calls, the office on Burlington Street. Patrick and his notepad. Frances and her manual. The man on Wentworth eating crackers, the woman with the gas leak. The couple who'd lost their health cards. "I suppose I do," she said. The bus turned onto her street. The city was lit up against the December dark, storefronts and streetlights, and the particular orange glow Hamilton gets in winter, the one that makes everything look like it's about to be okay. She got off at her stop, walked the half-block home, let herself in, made crackers after all, because she was tired and it was Tuesday, and sometimes that's enough. And on the counter by the kettle, where she'd left it the morning everything started, was a business card. Desmond Firth. Plain white. Just a name and a number. She'd never thrown it away. She put the kettle on. Outside, the December wind moved through the street, and somewhere on Barton, in an apartment, with a window that faced a parking garage, a woman was listening to the radio and eating something warm. I keep thinking about that food bank line. 15 people, everyone looking forward, looking down, looking anywhere that wasn't at a small woman in a coat that wasn't hers, holding a grocery bag, like it was something she had to earn the right to carry. I think about how easy it is to tell yourself someone else will do it. Someone younger, someone trained, someone without $40 in their wallet and a bus to catch. I think about how many times we've all done that arithmetic in our heads. The math that always comes out to, not enough, not me, not now. Sylvia Marchetti was 63 years old and recently widowed and wearing sensible shoes, and she did not have the time or the money or the particular kind of certainty that we tell ourselves we need before we're allowed to help someone. She just looked over and saw a person who was cold. That's all it takes. Most of the time, that's the whole thing, just not looking away. If something in this story found you where you are today, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment and tell me honestly, would you have stood at that bus stop? Would you have tapped your card? Like this video, subscribe to The Strong I Am, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for being here. You already have enough to help someone. You've had it all along.